So in this video, we're going to talk about a different type of loan structure. So up until now, we've been looking at principal and interest loans where we're trying to pay off both the principal and the interest at the same time until we reduce the balance to zero. A different type of loan structure that exists out there is what's known as an interest-only loan and a sinking fund. All right, often coupled with a sinking fund, I should say, but the interest-only loan itself. And to explain what an interest-only loan is, we're going to work through an example. So let's just say, to keep things really, really simple to explain it, that we're going to take a $100 loan. All right, so our $100 loan, and let's just say it's got 10% interest per annum. What that effectively means is the first time it accrues interest, all right, for that year, it's going to accrue $10 interest, okay? So it's going to have $10 interest the very first time we do it. What we're going to do with this loan, though, is we're going to pay off that $10. All right. So normally, if you had 10% interest, the outstanding balance would be $110. And normally you would then pay off $10 plus a certain amount to reduce the balance of the loan. What we're going to do here, though, is we're going to keep the balance at $100. We're just going to pay off the $10 straight away. All right. So the balance when you pay off that $10 remains at this $100. Okay, and what that is what we call an interest-only loan. We're only paying this interest right here. That's the only thing we're going to pay. We're not going to focus on paying anything different to that. All right, so you might sit there and go, okay, well, what does that mean for the loan itself? How are we going to pay back the $100 loan? Well, there's several ways you can do it. There's something you've got to have to consider. You are going to have to pay off that $100 at some stage. I mean, you might be using that $100 to buy a certain asset, and you might decide that you're only going to need that asset for a certain period of time. You might plan on selling that asset at the end, and that comes with risks, and we'll talk about that later. But often what it's actually happens here is it's often coupled with a sinking fund. All right, and what that sinking fund is, it's a savings account. Okay, so it's a savings fund essentially. We'll just quickly put that. It's a savings fund. All right, so what that means is it's going to be developing interest of its own. Okay, that's something that's really, really important. It develops interest of its own here. So what we need to do is we need to go, well, how much are we going to need to put in every single time to accrue our $100 that we can then use to pay back the loan? All right, so we might say we're putting $10 a year in. Okay, so we might go $10 per year. But the thing is, it's not going to take us 10 years to repay the loan. It's actually going to be less than 10 years because it's going to accrue interest over the period of the, the account being active. So we're actually going to be able to repay that in less than 10 years. Exactly how much? Well, that depends on interest rates and things like that. And that's something that's really, really important to note here. The sinking fund will have an interest rate itself, but we're going to eventually accrue. So until $100 is accrued, and that's including the interest. So we'll just say with the interest. And that's something that's really, really important to note here. All right, and then we're going to use that value here to pay off this over here. All right, and essentially that's how an interest-only loan coupled with a sinking fund works, okay? Now, you might sit there and go, okay, well, why does this loan structure exist and why might I take it over just a normal principal and interest loan, okay? And there are several reasons why you might want to actually take this, okay? There's lower monthly repayments on the loan itself, all right? Those come about because you're not needing to reduce the principal of the loan. You're not needing to reduce the $100 that we're looking at just before. All right. And what that might allow you to do is it might allow you to buy a more expensive property because your lending power becomes a little bit stronger because you've got lower repayments. All right. So you might be able to buy something that's a little bit more expensive. Now that obviously links, I'm going to jump to a con here, is it could tempt people to spend money that they really can't afford. And that's a real danger of this. And they could spend money, because it frees up cash to invest elsewhere, even if they aren't going to buy something more expensive than they otherwise were. It might free up cash that they might then choose to invest in other things, which once again could tempt people to spend money that they really can't afford. So it's a real danger in that. That doesn't mean that interest-only loans and sinking funds aren't beneficial in the right circumstance. They certainly are, but it's just something to be aware of. It can also be used in the right circumstances as a tax reduction. So that's another pro to this. But there are some cons to it as well. It's not available from every lender, so you might not be able to get it from a lender that you really want to use. You'd still need to pay off the principal at some stage. All right, you're still going to need to, and you might be thinking of doing that in different ways. I mentioned before, you might be using that loan to purchase an asset, it might be a house or whatever it is, but that property might depreciate. Okay, and that might mean that you're not going to be able to sell it for as much as what the original loan was, which means you have to get the money to repay the rest of the loan somehow, which once again could lead to people spending on things that they really can't afford. Another danger is the interest rates could be low. Now, the upside, I guess, of low interest rates is the interest on the loan itself is going to be lower, but you're not reducing the principal at the same time. And it also means that on your savings account, the interest you're getting on that sinking fund isn't going to be as high. Okay, so that's saying it's a real con to it as well. All right. Now, you might be thinking here, how do we actually calculate this? We use the simple interest formula, okay, because the interest is actually the same every single time because the balance of the account doesn't change. So that's something that's really important to note here. If you don't know the simple interest formula, I've got a video on that. Just go back and have a look at that. And another word that comes up and crops up here and then is the book value of the debt. All right, so book value of the debt is just the difference between how much is sitting in your sinking fund compared to what the original loan was. So our original loan was $100, for example. Let's say we'd saved up $60 so far in our sinking fund. Our book debt at that point in time is $40. All right, we're still essentially $40 in debt. We don't have to pay off the loan yet. Okay, so that's some important words. Let's now have a look at the calculations that we might be interested in making when we're looking at an interest-only loan and sinking fund. Starting with how do we actually calculate the monthly repayments? And this is something that I noted just before, in that when you're calculating these repayments, it's a simple interest formula. So if we remember the simple interest formula, the interest, oops, I'm in green, I want to go to blue for the white background. So the interest is equal to P multiplied by I multiplied by N, where P is the principal. So our principal is $25,000 here. The I is the interest rate, which is needing to be a decimal. So that's going to be 0.08. Really important not to confuse these two. This belongs to our interest-only loan. This belongs to our savings account, our sinking fund. All right. So really be careful of not mixing these two. All right. And then we're looking at our time. So our time here is a monthly repayment. So it's 1/12 of a year, which is how I'm going to enter it here. And let's now go and calculate what our interest is going to be. So that's something that's a real upside to this, is calculating the interest itself is actually a real nice quick calculation for us. 0.08 by 1/12, which we can see here has a interest of approximately $166.67 each month, or monthly, you could have said. Okay, so essentially that's how much they need to repay each month to keep the balance at $25,000. Now, obviously, this is being coupled with a sinking fund. So that means that there's also going to be an expense to the person taking this account that they need to commit to be able to save up the amount that they're going to then use to pay off the $25,000 here. All right. So they need to calculate the monthly deposit. Now, this sinking fund is compounding monthly. It's a compound interest fund. So what that means, I'm going to use the graphics calculator to do this, is a compound interest calculation. We're repaying it over 4 years, and because it's compounding monthly, this is going to be 12. All right. It's really important. The we're using the figures they're giving for our sinking fund here. Don't mix them up. So it's 4 years for monthly compounding. The interest rate of our sinking fund is 6%. We don't need that as a decimal because we're using our graphics calculator here. The present value, well, it's starting at 0, you're assuming. Otherwise, you wouldn't be taking out $25,000, I'm assuming. The PMT, well, that's what we're after. The future value, now this is really important. This is something that we need to take from the bank, even though we're going to then give it back to the bank, but we're essentially taking it from the bank at this point, and it needs to be 25,000, so it needs to be positive here. Then our PY, our payments monthly. Monthly deposit, yep. So 12, and our CY, compounding, yep, it's also 12. So, all right, so now we look at the PMT here, which is going to probably be an approximate. I'll just assume it's going to be an approximate. One of these days it will get me to where it's not. 6%. We need that one at 0. We need the PMT. We need that one at 25 grand. These need to be all 12s. So it's negative $462.13. So therefore, the monthly deposits required is approx $462.13. All right, so we've established that to keep the principal at $25,000 every single time, we need to make $166.67 payments every single month. To be able to save up the 25 grand within that 4 years, we also need to make a $462.13 deposit every single month that is going into a sinking fund. So next thing we need to consider is going, well, what's the total cost going to be to us? Because you got to remember that this isn't money that we're going to be spending on anything other than just repaying the loan still. So what's the total cost going to be? So total cost, this is a common calculation we get asked during these, is going to be approximately equal to, we're making monthly repayments, so it's 12 for 4 years, of $166.67 plus monthly repayments for 4 years of $462.13. All right, so we've got to look at this one. I guess we can probably just quickly point this out. This one here was for the interest-only loan. Interest only loan. And this one here was, we'll keep that, for the sinking fund. That's where I got those values from. So now when we're looking at this, our total cost, for the loan itself, got too many calculators in front of me, 12 by 4 by 166.67. It's actually really useful to keep multiple calculators when you're using the financial app in one of them. It's because it allows you to do these calculations in a different one. So the total cost is approximately $30,182.40. Now, what's really interesting here is we've established the total cost that it's cost whoever's taking out this loan to be able to repay that $25,000 essentially to the lender. Now, you might instantly think here that means the lender receives just $30,182.40 in total. But it's actually not quite that amount. So let's think about how much has the lender actually received from us in payments. So the total amount paid to the lender here, if we think about this, is it's going to be, so total paid to the lender It's actually going to be $25,000 because that's how much we're giving back to them at the end. So $25,000 plus how much we actually paid them every single time in interest. So we repaid them $166.67 each, 67 cents each month for 4 years. So, oops, wrong way. So it's going to be $166, and because this is an approximate, and 67 cents every single month. So that's by 12 for 4 years. All right. So when we start looking at this figure here, the total paid, so this is how much the lender receives back from us as a total sum. Obviously, they're receiving some of it monthly, but the principal is still the same. And that's going to be approximately $33,000, pretty much flat, and 16 cents. So you might sit there and go, well, hang on, total paid and total cost to us was different. They actually received more from us if we look at it. So total cost was $30,000, but they received $33,000 for us. So you can see there's an obvious difference in this, and the first thing that E wants us to do is calculate that difference. So let's just quickly do that. Difference is approximately equal to 33,016 cents. Subtract away the 30,182 and 40 cents. So the difference here is approximately, I could probably do it in the head, but I've got my calculator sitting here handy. So 30, 182 and 4. Oops, what was I doing? Stuff it, let's do it in my head. So what am I doing? 182 off of that. It's going to be easier just to do it in the calculator for the sake of time. So difference is approximately $2,817.76. Now you might be sitting here going, well, hang on. How can you physically pay back more than what you actually paid for this account? And the difference actually comes from the interest. I mean, you got to remember, we had a sinking fund. That sinking fund was accruing interest every single time throughout the entire duration of the loan, which is where that extra money has come from. So due to interest, I'm just going to write here. Usually I'd write a bit more of a sentence, but so due to interest of sinking fund. That's where the difference has actually come from. Which I always find is kind of interesting that you're actually able to give the bank more money than it actually cost you, essentially. So anyway, let's look at one final thing that you might be needing to calculate at some stage, and that's what we talked about earlier, which is known as book debt of the loan. Now, to be able to do this, what you actually need to be able to calculate is, we know what the outstanding balance of the loan is going to be. It's always going to be the same. So it's always going to be $25,000 here. What we don't know is what the value is going to be in our sinking fund. And that's what we need to calculate for 2 years. So it's 2 by 12 because sinking fund was compounding monthly. And you got to be careful. Sometimes it compounds differently to what the interest-only loans operating at. What was the interest on this one? 6%. The present value was 0. The PMT was approximately, and it's going to be negative because I'm putting it into the bank, so 462.13 for negative 462.13. The negative doesn't look very negative, but it's there. The future value, that's what we're calculating. The PY, CY are both 12 in this particular case. So let's quickly calculate a future value here. Wrong calculator. So 6%. that'll do it. So at that point in time, we had approximately $11,752.76 in the account. So if we're now looking at book debt, so book debt is going to be the difference between the original loan, so that's $25,000, and how much is in our sinking fund at this point. So $11,752.76. So therefore our book debt, that should be an approximate straight away because we're looking at the difference here. So 25 grand, subtract away our 11,752.76, which is $13,247.24. So we can see here that we can quickly calculate the difference between how much is essentially in our sinking fund. So we still need to accrue over $13,000 to be able to repay the total debt. All right. So that sort of summarizes interest-only loans and sinking funds, what they actually are, and some of the common calculations we might be required to make.